One of the big challenges is that when we started to translate curriculum into different languages, the original idea was we would use LibreOffice, which is like a Microsoft Word, open source Microsoft Word, and it turned out to be a nightmare. And one day I was making a presentation, and one of our IT guys working in Cameroon heard the presentation about lessons from Luke, and he says, "I would like to find out what can I do to help you." Well, I gave him my pie in the sky ideas of what I would like to see, thinking that, yeah, this is crazy, this is impossible. He says to me, no problem, we can do that. Well, it didn't take very long, and this guy produces this amazing piece of software that has really facilitated the growth of lessons from Luke. Here's the interface. This is online. He made an online and an offline version of this software. So this is the interface for translating lessons from Luke. First of all, we talked about the scripture. We upload the scripture from a paratext file directly into the lesson, so there's no risk of making mistakes or errors in retyping the scripture. Then we have the section where we go to translate. But before we go into that, I want to show you, you can see that here Luke quarter one, lesson one has green progress bar. And that green progress bar means that they're done. And that means that if we click either standard or single language, like standard is the bilingual form, the more normal form that we produce, that will download a fully formatted, ready to print LibreOffice file without having to do anything else to it. So this software has made my life, so much. It's amazing. So let's look at it. This is the translation interface, and this is for a language in Nigeria. They just started last week, Pangu, and they are translated from Hausa. Hausa is actually one of our language of wider communication, and it's also serving as a source language. So they translate from this, and so this is focused currently on translating the truth of the lesson. And so that's in the right side, in the small circle, is the context where they can see it in the lesson, almost like it looks on a piece of paper when it's printed. And then on the left side is the place where they type the translated text into. Below, it would be, if there's been changes, there's a complete history of any changes that are made and kept for other people to refer back to. So, project growth. 47 languages are in progress or have completed translation. This would not have been possible without this software. This software has made this feasible. Languages of wider communication, we have English, French, Spanish, Portuguese, Fulfulde, Sango, Lingala, Kiswahili, and Hausa. They are either complete or they're almost complete and ready to be available for others to use as a source language to translate from. And one of the big breaks that we had early on was the Cameroon Baptist Convention adopted the curriculum officially as their curriculum for their 1,000 churches to be used across the entire country. And because they liked the curriculum so much, they said, well, what more can you do? And so by request, I did lessons from Acts, which is another 52 lessons using the exact same structure, the same design, the same method. And so now we have 104 lessons, which is 2 years worth of lessons following the same structure. Lessons from Luke, lessons from Acts. The Joint Project for Christian Learning Materials, which is based in Nigeria, they picked up the curriculum and they translated and published it into Hausa. And that served upwards of 10 million children in congregations across northern Nigeria, which is, mind-boggling to consider. And now Hausa serves as a source language for other minority languages to translate from, if that's more appropriate in their context. Recently, we added 20 new projects in Nigeria. A colleague and good friend is the one behind that. And then Bambara in Mali, they did an adaptation called the limited literacy version. They reduced the amount of text involved because in their context, literacy is much more difficult. And when they introduced it, there was like 10 other language groups who saw it and said, we want this in our language too. So there's really a need, a recognized need and a desire on the part of people to have these kinds of materials in mother tongue to use in their churches and their ministries. Looking forward, we'd like to see this continue to grow for sure. One of the big challenges is the funding agencies. getting them, because if funders behind Bible translation projects don't recognize and integrate and support scripture engagement strategies for children and materials for children, then it doesn't get done. And this has really been one of the areas, has been how can we get funders to see this and value it, pick it up and integrate it? How do we get them to go from what is to what could be? And that's been kind of an ongoing challenge from my perspective. So that's something to pray about. And if you have any relationship with any of these funding agencies, you can push them a little bit to consider this. Additional lesson content. I'm getting requests for what more are you going to do? What more are you going to do? And we think we'd like to do something like Genesis and Exodus, but really doing that on my own is, yeah, it's a bit of a challenge. So if I could find people who would like to get involved and help make that happen, it'd be great to get some more people contributing in that way. I'd like to do a dedicated website where people can go to, and I don't know how to do a website, so where people can go and learn more and see the materials and get examples of how it's being used. I'd like to do instructional and demonstration videos and have them hosted on that website so that, like, for example, games. You can describe a game in text, but it's easier if people can see the game demonstrated. So if we had a place where people could go and see those games being demonstrated, it'd be much easier on the teachers to be able to understand and how to implement them in their own teaching. And then I need a programmer, because the guy that's the genius that was behind this software that's made my life so much easier and made growth so much feasible, he's no longer with SIL. He's involved in another ministry, so he's no longer available. And there are things that I'd really like to see, changes that need to be made, or some additional features that would not be nice to add to this software if it were possible. So I could really use a programmer to help me solve that, because this is that's not in my ballpark at all.